Hello dear friends. Although this channel is not specialized in economics, the debt trap into which this planet has fallen is important enough to give it coverage, because this crisis may provoke the events we are waiting for. Opinion piece. Unpayable debt. World record debt. Global debt triples. Selling fresh money almost for free. Crisis sends global debt soaring. Reached $253 trillion. Debt soars to 356 of GDP. In World War II, it reached 400 of GDP. China recorded the highest increase in debt. Debt goes downhill like a snowball. Indebtedness triples the global economy. 100 European economists call for debt relief. ECB considers debt cancellation inconceivable. Spain's 1978 constitution was written in a Masonic lodge. US could deploy attack missile network near China. French astronomers asked for help to find apricot-sized meteorite. Let's start. On February 5th, the Spanish newspaper El País published a manifesto signed by 100 economists and entitled "Cancel the public debt held by the ECB so that our destiny is back in our hands." The signatures were very unevenly distributed, not only because of the representation of the different countries, but also because within each of them the bias is evident. For example, in Spain, those belonging to the platform Economists in the Face of the Crisis predominated, with those specializing in energy and environmental issues also prevailing. The President of the European Central Bank, Christine Lagarde, responded to the letter signed by European representatives and economists in which they asked the organization to cancel the debt of the European Union member states. Lagarde has assured that she considers this cancellation of public debt to be inconceivable. The proposal was ratified by 100 economists from different European countries, headed by Thomas Piketty. Devastating data. Last week, we read in a report by Credit Suisse that the weight of world debt over GDP increased by 35 percentage points in 2020, while in the 2008 financial crisis, the increase amounted to 25 points of GDP in 2 years. Because of the health crisis, governments around the world are investing in gigantic aid and economic stimulus packages. Will governments hold out? Opinions differ. Global debt reached $255 trillion in 2019, and this year has exceeded 322% of the planet's annual gross domestic product, which is 40 percentage points, it is to say $87 trillion, more than accumulated at the start of the previous economic crisis in the year 2008, according to a study published Monday in Washington by the Institute of International Finance. Among emerging countries, China recorded the largest increase in debt, followed by Turkey, South Korea, and the United Arab Emirates. Expectations for this year are for a further increase in global debt, as fiscal policies remain expansionary. It is true that many think that central banks are ready, but it is not less true that boxers are also ready, and many fall in the first round when the first hook is thrown. We believe that in this scenario, economic and inflation forecasting models are relatively valid, as the current circumstances are unprecedented. All eyes will be on the evolution of bond yields and the attitude of central banks in the coming weeks. The latter is the same, as it has been for the last 10 years, but watch out for bonds. Debt. The health crisis has sent global debt skyrocketing and is having a very harsh impact on the economy. One of the most prominent effects is a huge increase in public and private indebtedness, which has more than tripled in relation to the world's gross domestic product. The highest global indebtedness in history, although it quadrupled during the Second World War. Imagine I borrow 10 euros and the next day I brag that I have managed to grow my economy by 9 euros. And the other euro I have spent on paying the interest on a loan I had previously and which was due today. To pay you back those 10 plus interest that you have lent me, well, we'll see how I manage. Now I don't care much. I am growing 9. I have learned this lesson well from my own experience. 21 years ago, I opened a business that was not profitable, but I insisted on keeping it open for 7 years in the hope of succeeding someday, getting deeper and deeper into debt until the debt ball became so big that I couldn't pay it and I had to close due to suspensions of payments. It is the same for a big country as it is for a small business. Bankruptcy. When the national debt reaches a limit, there are almost no cases in which it has been paid. The release of public coffers has always been by explicit or implicit bankruptcy. Devaluation has been the most common method of distinguishing bankruptcy through pretended payments. According to Adam Smith, rising levels of public debt worldwide have reached figures never seen before during peacetime. The growing trend of indebtedness has taken hold worldwide in recent years. However, the outbreak of the health crisis defied all expectations. Among several records, it led to the highest global indebtedness in history, equivalent to 322% of the gross world product. Data from the World Bank revealed that global indebtedness reached $253 trillion in 2020, a number that is equivalent to 3 times the generation of value of the planet's economy. According to a report by the Institute of International Finance analyzing a total of 61 countries, global debt reached a new record of 281 trillion in 2020. It represents an increase of no less than $24 trillion on a ratio of 355% of global GDP, also a figure never seen before. You see that there are different figures depending of the calculation and of the entity which made this, which gives these figures. A downhill ball. Debt is a management tool that allows us to get something done faster than we would do without it. The problem is when it becomes uncontrollable and the debt ball gets bigger and bigger like a snowball rolling downhill. The little income that the states receive to be able to finance the debt comes less and less from the powerful economic classes of groups and more from the middle classes, something that would have to be modified throughout structural reforms. Public debt or sovereign debt, the debt owed by the state to its citizens or countries, has soared in recent times in a large number of countries and has become one of the main causes for consent in some of the world's most important economies, Public debt is the sum of the debts owed by a state and can be expressed as an amount or as percentage of GDP that the country would have to spend to repay its debt. The Treasury issues debt securities, the so-called Treasury securities, which can be Treasury bonds, Treasury bills, or debentures, and when acquired by banks, individuals, or the foreign sector, they make up the public debt or state debt. The external debt is the set of obligations that the country has both in its public and private sectors with respect to other countries or institutions. That public and private debt is increasing and will increase is a fact. Just take a look at the forecast of the Institute of International Finance, which anticipates that public and private debt will increase from 255 trillions to $325 trillion by 2025. In fact, in the most developed countries, public debt will stand at 130% of gross domestic product, and in the US, it could exceed 140% of GDP. This is where many may wonder where it is possible to survive with such a high level of debt. There is no doubt that major fiscal stimuli are needed to return to the path of economic growth. Without growth, there is no social or economic prosperity. Moreover, if this stimuli can restore economic growth, the jobs that have been destroyed can be recovered, and as a result, governments will have more revenue with which to pay off their debts. Fiscal sustainability. According to David Lopez Cavia, some argue that the accumulation of debt can end up being lethal for the economy and hinder economic growth. However, there have been experiences such as those of Japan, with public debt exceeding 230% of GDP, and Italy, which for a long time has maintained public debt level exceeding 90% of the GDP. Thus, the key to being able to live with such high levels of public debt lies in so-called fiscal sustainability. In other words, it's a matter of being able to meet fiscal expenditures with sufficient tax revenues without incurring serious deficit problems that lead to public debt problems. However, it's difficult to achieve this balance or sustainability. The damage caused to the economy must be contained, workers and companies must be protected, and the economy must be relaunched towards solid growth. News in brief. Is the world running out of sand? After water, sand is the raw material that the world consumes in the greatest quantity. Our entire society is built on this material. Now humankind is facing a serious shortage of this resource that threatens to become one of the greatest sustainability challenges of the 21st century. Sand is the main substance used in the construction of roads, bridges, high-speed trains, and even projects related to land reclamation. It's also necessary for companies producing silicon chips, as it is one of the key ingredients. When this raw material is bound with cement, it becomes concrete. When mixed with bitumen, it becomes asphalt, and when heated, it becomes glass. Without sand, we would not have highways, skyscrapers, or high-speed trains. The US could deploy a network of precision strike missiles near China to bolster conventional deterrence. The missiles are part of an investment plan to the US Indo-Pacific Command has submitted to Congress that invokes spending $27.4 billion in this region over the next 6 years. US and China move from tariff war to tech war. Technology is one of the main issues China is discussing at its National Congress this week. The government sees the sector as central to its drive for modernization and self-sufficiency over the next decade and a half. We are moving from a tariff war to a technology war, but the US has multiple advantages in addition to its current leadership in some 30 technology areas that are critical to innovation. Chinese Congress sets 6.8% increase in defense budget by 2021. China's military spending is the second largest in the world after the colossal US budget. But in contrast to Washington's goals of projecting global power and engaging multiple conflicts at once, the People's Liberation Army has defined its role as primarily defensive. A strange seismic rumbling in Utah. Two earthquakes near Fillmore, Utah in September 2018 and April 2019 measured 4 and 4.1 on the Richter scale. They are sequences recorded by seismometers within the Utah Regional Seismic Network, which is focusing scientists' attention on the Black Rock Desert. Hidden beneath Utah's vast arid expanses lies an ancient volcanic complex that has been revealed to be far more active than it appears, scientists say. US Air Force accidentally revealed some parameters of its in-development B-21 stealth bomber. The military released a photo of a temporary hangar prototype for the still classified B-21 rated strategic bomber, allowing experts to estimate the size of the aircraft. It turned out that the B-21 would have a fuselage about 15 meters long and a wingspan of 42 meters, which is significantly smaller than the B-2 Spirit stealth strategic bomber's dimensions of 21 meters and 52 meters respectively. French astronomers call for help to find apricot-sized meteorite. The space rock, estimated to weigh about 150 grams, was captured falling near Bordeaux, southwestern France. French astronomers are urging space watchers to join the search for an apricot-sized meteorite that lit up the skies over France last weekend before falling to Earth near the southwestern cities of Bordeaux. Organic building block for life found on the surface of an asteroid. The Japanese Space Agency has confirmed the discovery of two types of organic matter on the surface of an asteroid for the first time in human history, in a finding that may unlock the secrets of life on Earth. Last news. The Spanish Constitution of 1978 was written in a Masonic lodge. May do not know it, but the Spanish Constitution of 1978 was written in a Masonic lodge. This is in quote. States the website of the Regular Symbolic Lodge Knowledge 158 of Granada. Their initial schedule of meetings was secret, but they couldn't avoid the leaks that constantly interfered in the drafting of the text. To totally isolate themselves from the outside world, they sought a temple located in the Parador of Gredos. Freemasonry is a tentacle of the European aristocracy, which, with its epicenter in London, which according to the documentary analysis of revisionist historians functions as a secret organization of a conspirational nature, whose main task is to achieve political influence and domination of the forces operating behind the scenes to establish a totalitarian world order. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friend.